got a very interesting background and obviously spent a long time in the industry now as well. Obviously, you spent 8, 9 years the US Marine Corps before getting into advisory.
I wanted to be able to work with people that were being underserved by other parts of the industry, namely people like myself at that time. Just young professionals don't have millions of dollars to invest, have totally different financial planning needs than retirees or really high net worth people.
I really like that thread about wanting to help people who don't get help easily, especially in this space. And I think you work with a lot of younger folks as well during that time, right?
I did, yeah. I think our median client age over the life of the firm was something like 35, maybe slightly older than that. I was joking about it for a while before I looked it up and figured out that it was literally true, that we had more debt under management than we did assets at various points because of student loans, not even counting mortgages, like just student loans and credit cards and car loans and such. And I thought that was a lot of fun. I just really enjoyed being able to work with people at a point where we were likely to be able to have a greater impact over the course of their entire life. It's easier now to start your own RIA than it ever has been for a whole bunch of reasons, and I think that's mostly a good thing. But there are a lot of people who start their own firm that don't really want to be business owners and maybe aren't really built to be a business owner. They're just doing it more out of necessity. They get 2, 3, 4 years into running their firm, and they're realizing that they're dealing with a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with financial planning and clients and why they got into this line of work in the first place. So compliance and marketing and managing a team and payroll and putting together a tech stack and all these other things. Really what I'm trying to do here is just provide them an alternative to where they can operate on an advice-only model and just work under our RIA instead of having to start their own. There are huge companies been doing this for decades, LPL and Ameriprise and others, right? The only thing that's different is we're just doing it for advice only. And I think we're the only firm doing that so far. And I hope a whole lot of others join us in doing that.
I think advice only becomes a platform that you come in as an advisor, talk to your clients, build the business, help the clients. We'll take care of a lot of the rest.
If you have a traditional AUM-based practice, there's maybe around 2% or so of the population that you can serve with that kind of model. Because for a whole bunch of reasons, it makes sense for them to have a minimum account size, right? Maybe 2-3% of people, something like that. If you have an advice-only practice, it's like 99% of people are your starting point for who you could potentially work with in your business.
Hi, Steve. Welcome to Advisor Ally. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
How was your? I know it's probably the first or second meeting after a long weekend, so I do appreciate that as well. How was your long weekend? Did you do anything interesting?
Nothing really interesting. I was at home taking care of sick kids. So
Oh gosh, okay.
it's
I'm sorry.
exciting time. Glad
I'm
to be able
sorry
to
I
get
brought
out
it
there
up.
though.
You were probably trying to not think about that, so I'm sorry about that. I have
Oh, that's
sick
fine.
kids
They're
at home
feeling
as well,
better
so
now. They're off to school today, so they're all right. It happens.
good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so Steve, really excited. I think you've got a very interesting background, and obviously spent a long time in the industry now as well. So we'll get into all of that bit by bit. But I always like to kind of get started a little bit with the backstory, and would love to. Obviously, you spent 8, 9 years the U.S. Marine Corps before getting into advisory. So tell us a little bit about that experience. How was that, and then what led to where you are now?
I did, yeah. That's probably a little bit of an unusual background to to have gotten into this from. But we can go into further detail on what I did and stuff while I was in if you want. But the transition it felt pretty natural, even if it was completely unplanned. So after I got out, I really wanted to go to school first, primarily because nobody else in my family had been to college before. And so that had just always been a goal of mine. And I knew that I wanted to stay in San Diego, where my last duty station was, just because I had already met the woman who's now my wife and kind of fell in love with her in the area and decided why not stick around here. So started school at San Diego State, and really I just picked finance, not because it was part of my master plan, but because I'd always enjoyed learning about it. And I figured if this is something I like reading about, maybe it would be a good career for me. Assumed that I would probably end up working in corporate finance or as a fund analyst, something like that. But got really lucky that there was a guest speaker who came in to talk to this finance student group, talking about the work that he did as a personal financial planner, helping people with personal finance stuff instead of just helping improve a corporation's balance sheet or something. So luckily, he came and talked to us, and that just immediately sounded way more appealing to me, way more satisfying, fulfilling, to be able to help real people with real problems in their lives instead of just doing like working as an analyst or something. And I just got lucky that at San Diego State they have a financial planning program that you can take the CFP exam right out of undergrad as long as you take the right electives and a few extra classes. And so that's what I did. And then while I was in school there in that program, I worked part time in a paraplanner role for a financial planning team at MetLife. Figured out pretty quick that even if I could learn a lot there, that wasn't going to be the path I wanted to take over the long run. And so I ended up starting my own firm as soon as I graduated. So that was called Next Gen Financial Planning. And a big big part of the reason why I wanted to start my own firm was I wanted to be able to work with people that were being underserved by other parts of the industry, namely people like myself at that time. Just young professionals don't have millions of dollars to invest, have totally different financial planning needs than retirees or really high net worth people. And the industry at that time, even more so than now, was completely ignoring people in that group, thinking that they don't need financial planning help if you don't have millions of dollars or that you can't profitably serve them. And I thought that was all nonsense. So I thought I would just go start my own firm. And long story short, it was very hard for the first few years, but ended up figuring out a few things along the way, grew the team a little bit, and ended up selling the firm to employees last year.
Brilliant. I mean, nothing good comes easy, takes a little bit of time. I mean, we're in that journey as well as a startup, so can completely relate to that. Yeah, some interesting points there. I think San Diego is not the worst place in the world to settle in.
Oh,
So
not at all. Yeah.
I'm sure you're loving it there. And it's interesting, Steve, the number of people I talk to, and how they get into this field. And what you said there, like being inspired by someone who spoke about it, or someone else who kind of had a course in finance, personal finance, and kind of understanding how useful it is for themselves and for people around them. I think it makes a lot of sense. Um, but so next gen, and I really like that thread about wanting to help people who don't get help easily, especially in this space. And I think you work with a lot of younger folks as well during that time, right? Perhaps,
I did, yeah. I think our median client age over the life of the firm was something like 35, maybe slightly older than that. And usually they had little to no investable assets. I was joking about it for a while before I looked it up and figured out that it was literally true that we had more debt under management than we did assets at various points because of student loans, not even counting mortgages, like just student loans and credit cards and car loans and such, had more debt than assets under management. Um, and I thought that was a lot of fun. I just really enjoyed being able to work with people at a point where we were likely to be able to have a greater impact over the course of their entire life and to help people that um, most of the industry was ignoring and thinking that you couldn't serve profitably completely incorrectly.
right, and then that's it, and that's interesting that we'll get into that model a little bit as well, right? Because obviously, if it's an AUM based system, you take a percentage of the AUM, which is a typical model
Sure.
in many
Yeah, with that
ways,
model, of course, you have to have some minimum account size, a million or whatever it is. You just have to. It makes sense.
right? And so when you were working with these professionals, how did it work? What was the commercial kind of economic?
We just had a flat fee model where we would charge a set amount per year that covered both financial planning and investment management, regardless of account size. And then it changed a little bit over time, but for most of the time that I was there, let's see, probably about 3 years after I started the firm, and then from then on, we just had a simple calculator that tried to estimate financial planning complexity variables. So it was right on the website too. Clients could see it before they ever even talked to us. And it would just look at things like, is this a single person or a married couple? Do they own a house? Do they have equity compensation, rental properties and such? And once they answer all those questions, it just spits out a number. And that number hopefully usually correlated with how much time we would spend actually working on somebody over the course of a year. And that was it. And if they had zero AUM or they happen to have larger investment accounts because maybe they'd been earning higher incomes for longer and were good savers, or maybe they had an inheritance or whatever, they did have some assets. Either way, it was the same charge. It was just based on how much time we expect to spend working for that person, which seemed to me like it was more fair.
Exactly. And I think it's not just the point that you made there earlier was it opens up advisory to a lot more people, right? Because you don't need that minimum number, whatever it might be, a million, 2 million, whatever. But and I'd love to also hear your view on this. Is it also easier for someone to work with an advisor where to get started at least, they want to test the waters, see if there's chemistry here, if it's working. Even for that, I think a flat fee model kind of works, right? Rather than committing to an in
It
AUM?
can, yes. So we focus mostly on having an ongoing service model. We built this annual service calendar where over the course of a year, we split the year into 3 blocks of 4 months each. During each of those blocks, we would have a set list of topic areas that we cover for every client on a revolving basis to make sure we never go too long without readdressing some important topic area for them. But we did also work with clients on short-term projects or even just 1 hour meetings, in part for that reason. Is this if you're selling financial planning services, it's something that's very hard for people to understand what you do and how it helps them. It's not a tangible thing. Like you can't hold it in your hand and understand, okay, this is how it's going to help me and improve my life. A lot of the people that we'd worked with had never worked with a financial planner before. And so it's just hard for them to understand what do you even get for that and what is it like. And even if they do have a good understanding of what financial planning is and they've worked with somebody before, they don't know what it's like to work with us. And it's a big commitment that we're asking of somebody to spend all this time gathering information and opening up to us and talking through things and putting together a plan, and spending a lot of money on it. And so if we're asking them to make that big commitment, ideally they should know what it's going to look like at the end. And so it's very hard to do in this line of work. And one way to help address that is to work with people in short-term projects. Yeah.
Right, right. Makes total sense. And actually, on that note, we'll get to your current big project, and I know you're kind of excited to talk about that. But what is since you work with a lot of the young folks and a lot of there's this big talk of the wealth transfer that's happening as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, with new technology and DIY and Robinhood and all of that. Do you see a lot of younger folks also looking for advisors and advice? Is that a trend as well? Or are people starting off doing stuff on their own, then they realize that they need help after a while?
Yeah, most of the people who were coming to us, it was because they had some change in their life or finances that just added new complexity that scared them and that they felt like they couldn't DIY anymore. So maybe one example would be equity compensation at a new job, or maybe they get an inheritance, or maybe they're getting married and trying to figure out how to combine finances with a spouse for the first time, or having a baby, or buying a house. Like just something has changed in their life. Sometimes not enormous change, like buying a house probably isn't a huge life change on the order of some other things, but just something happened that made them realize, okay, the numbers are getting big enough and scary enough, or this is getting complex enough that I'm not confident just reading on subreddits anymore about what I should do here. Maybe I should get someone with more experience to look at my situation and help me figure it out.
Too many moving parts.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so that was next gen, and I know there's a big new launch coming up. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the new thing I'm working on since moving on from the last firm is a support platform for advice only financial advisors. So advice only broadly, most people understand that to mean that it's just financial advisors who work with people on financial planning without also managing investments or selling any kind of product for commission. So we don't provide insurance policies to people. We don't manage investments. We just do financial planning. And right now, for most financial advisors, if you want to operate on an advice only model, the far majority of the time, the best path for them to do that is to go start their own firm. And it's easier now to start your own RIA than it ever has been for a whole bunch of reasons. And I think that's mostly a good thing. But there are a lot of people who start their own firm that don't really want to be business owners and maybe aren't really built to be a business owner. They're just doing it more out of necessity because if I want to work with clients, this is the way to do it on this kind of service model. So uh, what happens in a lot of these cases is they get 2, 3, 4 years into running their firm, and they're realizing that they're dealing with a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with financial planning and clients and why they got into this line of work in the first place. So compliance and marketing and managing a team and payroll and putting together a tech stack and all these other things are a very, very different skill set and set of knowledge than being a financial planner and dealing with client communication and taxes and investing in estate planning, right? Just two very different pathways. And it's hard to do both at the same time. I know because I've done it. It's hard to do both at the same time. And not a whole lot of people are interested in doing that. And one descriptor that I've heard for this group that I kind of like is that they are accidental, unhappy business owners, where they never really intended to own a business. And it's a tough position to be in sometimes because there are only a few pathways out of it. Like you can try and hire a team and grow out of it. You can just decide to intentionally stay small. A lot of these folks end up joining forces with another existing firm so that they can be in a role again where they're just focusing on working with clients. But it's a little bit of a tough position to be in. And so really what I'm trying to do here is just provide them an alternative to where they can operate on an advice only model and just work under our RIA instead of having to start their own. And that's not a new thing. Like there's this whole category that people call corporate RAs or tuck-in RAs. That's what we are, and that's not new. Like there are huge companies been doing this for decades, LPL and Ameriprise and others, right? The only thing that's different is we're just doing it for advice only. And I think we're the only firm doing that so far, and I hope a whole lot of others join us in doing that. Um, but that's the main thing that's different. And then also we just do it for a flat fee instead of taking a percent of their revenue like most of these platforms. We just charge them a set rate of 18,000 per year, covers their compliance and tech and a lot of other stuff, and they can just focus on clients.
Got it. And it's amazing because obviously, like more I speak to advisors, I think I do feel like there's a bit of a movement right now, from commissions to AUM based fees to now advice only a flat fee. So I think even for them, having a structure or platform like this makes total sense. And I think what you mentioned earlier is interesting because a lot of people break away for the joy of or for the want of wanting to do it their way, which they can't probably do it in their existing firm, and yet a few months in, all these additional things that they need to do kind of weigh them down in many ways. But it's awesome that you're the first, and like you said, I mean, I think it's something the industry should kind of welcome, and hopefully there'll be more like advice only as well. So where is advice only in terms of launch and the roadmap? Is it coming soon?
Yeah, so ARIA registration was approved in February. Onboarded the first 5 brave soul advisors right away, and then I wanted to pause for a while to make sure everything's kind of running smoothly operationally, that we've got reasonable infrastructure to be able to support people before just taking on too many too quick. And you've been using the last few months with those initial 5 to get things running smoothly. And I think we're ready to start taking on more now. So yeah, as soon as our website guy is finished, with his part, we're going to hit the go button on the website at adviceonly.com and make an announcement that we're ready to start onboarding more, and we'll see who's interested.
Good stuff, and we're excited to kind of follow the journey from our side as well, Steve. With and I know we had a brief chat about this the last time we spoke as well, right? With something like this, obviously, and not just specific to your firm, infrastructure becomes super important to make sure that you're kind of optimal and efficient in your operations as well, right? What is your view on that? I mean, obviously, you spend a lot of time in the industry now. AI is the big buzzword in many ways, but how have you seen tech evolve, and where do you think actually tech and AI could solve for areas that aren't really optimal today?
Yeah, I've only been working in this field for like 11 years or so now, and I've seen tremendous change in that time
Mhm.
over the number and breadth and capability of the tech tools available to RAs. When I mentioned earlier that it's easier now to start an RA than it ever has been, tech is one of the reasons for that. And so I think
Right.
it's mostly been a good thing, even though it does feel a little bit overwhelming to advisors at times. And
Mhm.
I also see that we're starting to have a lot more crossover in the categories of what these tools do. So it's harder now than ever to put them into neat boxes of this is a CRM, this is a tool for gathering client data, this is a financial planning software, this is a data aggregator, whatever. They're all bleeding into each other's categories, and so it's
Mhm.
getting even harder now. And I think that's probably going to continue. And I've long been of the opinion that I would want to have kind of the best in breed tool for each category and just make sure I'm selecting ones that talk well with each other so I can build good workflows between them and operate efficiently, which is super important when you're dealing with clients that are smaller than most firms and have lower average revenue. That was especially important for us in the last firm. But I'm starting to think that as the tech landscape shifts for RAs, we'll probably go more towards all-in-one tools rather than trying to choose the best in each category anymore, because they're just bleeding into each other in so many more ways now. And one thing that kind of concerns me a lot is this hallucination issue that doesn't seem to be going away. This is an area in financial planning we have to be accurate, and we have to be able to
Yeah.
explain how we got any specific answer in words or answer to a calculation. We have to be able to know where that came from, and it has to be accurate. And then data security is also incredibly challenging right now. That scares me a little bit. One thing that excites me a lot is the potential to have all of our information from lots of different places talk to each other and match each other. So if we can combine info that we have and emails from clients and our meeting notes and the account aggregation and the written financial plans and all these other data sources, our CRM, all of those can match each other. And then we can export that to somewhere else in a useful way. That's super cool. And that's why I like what you're working on with Fast Tracker. That's certainly an example of a company trying to do that well. So that's one of the things that excites me. And if these tools allow us to spend more of our time focusing on clients instead of doing other stuff, and if it allows us to serve clients better, then yeah, I'm all for it 100%. I don't think it's ever going to take humans out of the loop. That doesn't seem likely to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the version I'm hearing now, and which makes sense, is it's going to replace some tasks that humans are doing. Uh, but at the end of the day, I think people come to humans for the human element of the advice. And I had this veteran advisor say to me that, I mean, they obviously you go with that fee-based, AUM fee-based model. And he said, even the 1% that you charge, only 20 basis points really is for money management. It's everything else that you do for a client where you get the 80 basis points. So I don't think that's going to go away. And, fully agree with you. I think some of the points that we discussed last time as well, I think the current iteration of AI is to make these tools talk to each other because we're not even there yet. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there are more kind of central and native AI native solutions that start eating into some of the multiple tools that exist today. Because a typical firm ends up working with what, four, five, six different uh, software systems, right? I mean, on
Oh,
average.
easy. Yeah, so at NextGen, last time I added up, we had, I think it was 31 different tech tools that we use for various purposes, because it's not just about directly client service. There's also all kinds of other stuff. Like you have, I don't know, portfolio analysis software. You have your email tool. You have Slack if you use it for internal communication, maybe. You have just a whole bunch of other stuff that it takes to run a business. Your accounting software. Like there are just so many things. And yeah, you can't ignore tech as any type of business these days for sure. Even the simplest of businesses still need to use some thought in how they apply technology. But at the same time, I think a lot of RIAs put a little bit too much attention on tech, and I've seen it come at the expense of other areas. It's not only about technology. I don't mean to insult the guy like a guy like you who's building good tech for advisors, but there are so many other areas that an RIA owner needs to be considering. There's recruiting and training your employees. There's improving your service model. There's all of your marketing materials. Like there are so many other things into running an RIA that have almost nothing to do with tech. And I just don't want us to put too much attention on the tech side of things and hurt the other areas.
I mean, basically, tech should be an enabler. And it should almost be hidden, right? You don't need to know that you're interacting with it every day because then it defeats the purpose. And to the point, the other functions that are the real focus areas, and that's where I think advice only becomes a platform that you come in as an advisor, talk to your clients, build the business, help the clients. We'll take care of a lot of the rest. That's kind of the model you're shooting for, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing I'm trying to do too is I think there's been a lot of conversation over the years around the ethical case for an advice only model and how it supports clients. I don't think there's been nearly enough attention on the business model advantages of an advice only practice. And so that's something I'm trying to demonstrate too. And part of the reason why I said I hope other people copy us. There are a tremendous amount of advantages over more traditional models. So, like some examples might be you have lower client acquisition costs, in part because there are just so many more people out there who want this kind of help and can't get it from existing firms. Your client acquisition costs can be very close to zero instead of traditional RIAs are spending, depends which benchmarking survey you look at, but something on the order of like $1,000 to $4,000 per client that they acquired marketing costs, right? That's a huge difference right there. Then there's the fact that we get immediate revenue collection. We don't collect trails from insurance policies over a long period of years. We're not collecting AUM fees every quarter and spreading out that revenue. As soon as you do the work with an advice-only practice, the client pays you, and then you're done. You get that immediate revenue collection. We also have much simpler compliance. If we can drop all of that stuff from our ADV, much, much easier to deal with compliance. Many fewer things that they have to worry about there. It's a lot easier to build trust with clients too, which I think you could probably make an argument. I don't have clear data for it yet, but I think you could probably reasonably make an argument that you can build trust more easily with clients and therefore have higher client retention rates with an advice only model. We also don't have to worry about risks from traders and wire fraud and such. We don't even have access to clients' accounts, so that's not going to be an issue, right? You can have higher client counts. Planning is not a loss leader anymore. It's like your main source of revenue, so you don't have to worry about having an important part of what you provide to clients be a cost to you to provide rather than a profit source. So there are just a whole lot of advantages to advice only practices as a business model that I hope a lot more people wake up to. And it is starting to happen. And what's really cool about it is that it's not advisors leading the charge, it's clients. Clients are demanding this. And that's most people who start operating on an advice only model within a pretty short period of time, they have waiting lists of months long of clients that they can't serve yet. Because even just the simplest, most basic, immediate way to see that that's true is if you have a traditional AUM based practice, there's maybe around 2% or so of the population that you can serve with that kind of model, because for a whole bunch of reasons, it makes sense for them to have a minimum account size, right? Maybe 2-3% of people, something like that. If you have an advice only practice, it's like 99% of people are your starting point for who you could potentially work with in your business. That's an enormous difference.
Right. The time just goes up. And I think that's interesting also because when there are specific uh, trigger events or something that happens also, you could just have a session with someone
Yeah.
to kind of immediately look after something that needs to be um, looked after as well. One question I did have, and I think, as I understand your model a little bit better, so you obviously kind of work with a client, come up with a plan for them, but the actual execution, they can still do it. How do you ensure continuity in a model like this, where you do not have access to all their account information and things like that? Because say you meet someone after 6 months, how does that work from an advisory standpoint?
Well, we can still help them implement things. It's more about empowering the client to be able to do things themselves instead of us doing it for them. So, like, for example, you can still do a simple spreadsheet for them or use a tech tool that says, okay, you're going to sell this many shares of this, buy this many shares of this. You can have a series of screenshots or a video guide that says, okay, if you're using Vanguard or Fidelity or Schwab, here's step by step how you execute those trades. You can even walk through them during a meeting. Just have them do a screen share. They're in control. They're clicking around, and you say, okay, here's where you click to do this. So you can help with that. Same thing on the insurance side or any other part of financial planning. I think it's more about empowering clients to be able to do things themselves, because most of this stuff really isn't that complicated when it comes to the actual execution of it. Figuring out how somebody should approach these types of financial planning questions and helping them make more informed decisions and dealing with complexities around investment stuff or tax stuff or insurance policies, that stuff is kind of hard. But the actual execution of it, once they feel like they can make a more informed decision on which path to take and they know what path they want to go down, the actual execution of it's pretty easy. And there's no reason why we should be paid for the execution part of it instead of the planning and consulting part of it when they can do the execution easily themselves.
Right. Understood. Thought very, very, it was a useful lesson in advice only planning as well, Steve. I appreciate it. I think I learned a lot more than I knew before the session. And I'm excited for the big launch. Definitely rooting for you and for this kind of thing to take off as well in general in the industry. Um,
Thanks. I
you know,
appreciate it. Yeah, I'll do what I can. Play my small part. Yeah.
and we've talked a lot about business and shop. One thing normally we like to end the episode on is also try and understand what you like outside of work, what kind of floats your boat outside of advisory and financial planning. What's
Yeah.
a hobby or passion?
I mean, outside of work these days, pretty much my whole life is kids. They're
Kids.
still pretty young. My daughter just turned 9. My son is 5. So they're still young enough that they actually like hanging out with me still. So I think I'm going to keep it for as long as I still have it and focus mostly on them. But outside of kids, I don't know. I've been getting back into running lately. Just signed up for a marathon again. I used to run a lot and then haven't as much since having kids. So now that they're old enough, they're starting to become a little bit more independent. I can start putting more miles in. So get back in marathons and Try and fight off the dad bod. My wife keeps trying to tell me I'm not a 20-year-old Marine anymore. I don't think I believe her yet, so I keep pushing too hard and getting injured. But I'll do what I can. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Really enjoyed today's conversation. Thanks again for giving us time. And we're looking forward to Advice Only formally launching or relaunching again. So
Hey, thanks for having me,
uh,
Vineet.
thank you. Take care.